over a nice cup of relaxing tea. Okay, so question 1, what is Qigong? This is often asked a lot of times in questions and answers sessions and for lessons with beginners. Everyone has a slightly different answer and take on it, and certainly throughout time with my practice, my answer has gradually become different based on my own experiences of what I think Qigong is and what I think Qigong is not. On a basic level, Qigong, the word is a Chinese word meaning exercise and energy, so an energy exercise or Qi exercise. For me, Qigong is also about developing instincts, developing your character as a person, especially this if you practice more deeply and your mind and develop your character to become kinder, more gentler, more stronger, and have a stronger sense of morals and ethics. Which leads on to the next question quite nicely. How can I tell how strong my energy is, or how strong is my Qi? How much Qi do I have? You can tell if you're honest and you look in the mirror, and other people can tell as well. The real simple question really is answered like this: how do you behave? That is a good sign of how strong or how weak your Qi is, or how weak your Qigong is. If you're always turning up late to somewhere, for meetings, for work, for Qigong classes, that's a sign of how strong your Qi is. If you're very argumentative, aggressive, that's how strong your Qi is. In fact, every emotion relates to your instinct and your energy and your level of Qigong. Imagine you're in a class, you're doing Qigong, and you don't have the mindfulness to maybe turn off all your phones, or maybe you're talking over the instructor in the class. That is another sign of your level of Qigong and your level of Qi. If a person is more mindful about their everyday life, then you can tell this Qi is getting stronger. I would say mindfulness and character are sure signs of a person's development with their Qigong. So, how to get good at Qigong? It's really easy, right? All you have to do is just hold up a mirror and look at yourself truthfully and honestly in the mirror. Now imagine you've met someone who is running a Qigong class and they have a wall full of trophies and certificates, and they're claiming to be a super duper grand master, grand official master, whatnot. But look at their character and see how they behave in front of other people, and see how they behave when they're not around so many people. If you can check out their lifestyle and how they really are, that's a much better example of their Qigong level and their development than pieces of paper on a wall or certificates. So to come back to the question originally, what is Qigong? With all that in mind, I would say in a way it's a moving and stillness type of Vipassana type practice. I know that can be quite lofty, and often people just want to hear what moves they're going to learn or what meditation. But actually, if you're in this for the longer journey, then I would suggest this way of practicing is a much healthier and more spiritual way of practicing. Which leads on to the next question as a nice segue: is Qigong a religion? And actually, I would say no, it is not. There is no praying to any deities. There is no Godhead figure. There are really no prayers, and certainly no saints or anything like this. So Qigong is open to any forms of faith that you have or don't have. It's certainly not a religion, and you can apply this practice generally as a healthy meditation and exercise routine as part of your everyday life. Let's try the next question, which I find a little bit triggering and a bit annoying. Is Qigong just a warm-up? Often people go to other classes and they do a couple minutes of Qigong and as a warm-up before they do their actual main practice, which could be any other type of practice. Qigong has a long, rich history, and it's an entire being and syllabus all on its own. It definitely has as much history as anything else, like martial arts, Tai Chi Chuan, lots of different Kung Fu. All of these things have their own influential take on the world. Qigong is not just a warm-up. Often, I would say, truthfully, a lot of instructors that treat Qigong as a warm-up simply have not learned enough Qigong to hold an entire hour, 2 hour, 3 hour, 4 hour class. All they know is some simple basic moves that they then treat, I would say quite disrespectfully, as a warm-up. It's good to warm up in a class, but use a warm-up. Warm up in the class with warm-up exercises. Then do your main branch of whatever Qigong you're doing or whatever activity you're doing, and then do a cool down, or in this case, often or not, we cool down with a meditation. But it's like saying meditation is not that important, it's just a warm-up, so we do 2 minutes of meditation before we start our main subject. Or if you went to a music class to study violin, but they just treated violin as a warm-up, you did 2 minutes or so of playing the violin, and then you went on to your main instrument, which is way more important than the violin, right? Another question I'm often asked, especially in the winter, is it okay to wrap up warm with a scarf, hat, gloves, jacket, thermal jacket, snow boots, husky dog, saber-toothed tiger, to go outside and practice your Qigong? Well, if you have to wrap up like that, like a snowman, then it's far too cold to be outside practicing anything, especially Qigong. Another question I get asked, should we practice Qigong inside or outside? Well, metaphorically, all Qigong should be practiced inside, because it's an internal practice. Never mind. Okay. Outside was always considered better because you had fresh air. Maybe you were in a park or in a garden that had a big space to perform some of these bigger motions and bigger forms. Inside has a disadvantage, apparently, of being too stuffy and not circulating a lot of qi. Having said that, nowadays, especially from 2025s and onwards, I would suggest not practicing outside in public, because I think it's far too dangerous and you're far too vulnerable to be outside doing strange moves and attracting a lot of unwanted attention. I would suggest, if you have a really nice garden, practice there in privately. If you don't have a garden, I would suggest you find your favorite room in your house, open the window, practice the Qigong that you can practice and the meditation, and then close the window. That way you have safety, privacy, and enough fresh air to absorb into your body, which will then metamorphosize into Qi. Safety always comes first. Another popular routine that people often do, especially if they're learning something like Qigong or meditation at a gym or in a leisure center, is they feel the need to have a shower or a bath after their practice. So I guess the question is it okay to have a shower after practicing Qigong? Traditionally, there is a theory that if you have a shower straight after your practice, then you actually wash away all the Qi from the skin level that you've developed during that practice as a Qi field. So to answer the question quite succinctly, no. Another question is, can I practice Qigong when it's hailing or raining? No. If it's starting to rain, as it is now, don't practice Qigong in the rain. In fact, here's a question I don't get asked. Does sex involve losing my Qi? Okay, so there is a theory, especially a long time ago, that it was said that every time a person had sexual intercourse, they would lose a certain amount of Qi that they built up that day. Often, Qigong masters were monks and they weren't participating in sex either at all, so they were celibate, or they were keeping it to a very minimal practice, if you want to call it that. If you want to take the practice seriously and you want to develop maybe even as a monk or maybe a instructor or maybe a master of Qigong, probably low-key keep the sex to a minimum. Sorry. What is the best time to practice Qigong? There are key times that seem to be more beneficial than other times to practice Qigong. Having said that, nowadays I would suggest it's better to practice any time than no time. Sometimes I've said, say I said 1 o'clock in the afternoon is a great time to practice Qigong. I can guarantee people would then use that as an excuse and say, well, I'm busy at 1, so I can't practice. And they just will not practice for the rest of the day. And they would use it as a great get out of not practicing. Traditionally, the best time was 3 a.m. till 5 a.m. I did used to practice around this time, 3 o'clock in the morning. There were certain forms I learned traditionally that needed to be practiced at that time. So I would practice from 3 till about 4, half 4, and then do some meditation and then go back to bed and go sleep and then wake up again for that day. I don't honestly expect anyone to do this, and it can be quite impractical for a Western way of living now, especially working and whatnot. So I would suggest to figure out what time is your best time of the day. When are you at your optimum? And maybe, if it's possible, practice at that time. Now, if you want to develop yourself even further, you could do the opposite and figure out what is your weakest time of the day and practice then. The idea being, if you can practice Qigong and you're quite strong at your weakest time of the day, imagine how strong you'll be at your strongest time of the day. Another question which often comes up is, how often do I have to practice? Well, ideally, most days, if not every day. And it's better to practice 10 minutes every day than one practice for an hour once a week. Consistency is definitely the key. Now for a quite controversial question. Can Qigong cure my eyesight? What should I expect from my Qigong class? Sometimes the Qigong class, the moves can be quite tricky or difficult. Sometimes they're very easy. Above all though, the Qigong class, you should always do Qigong and meditation and feel either the same or a little bit better than when you started the class. If you start to feel ill at any time, then my suggestion is to stop that Qigong and seek advice from someone who can advise you on what to do next. Is Qigong all the same? Absolutely not. Each style has its own set of regulations and rules and its own formula of how to practice. So it's best not to mix up all different styles of Qigong. Qigong is a collective term for this type of exercise and meditation, but it doesn't hold true that every single Qigong is exactly the same, following exactly the same principles and rules. Another question often arises is about sensations and feelings when practicing Qigong. Often when we practice any type or style of Qigong, after a while sensations of heat and tingling and colours, etc. can develop as you practice. I would suggest holding back a little bit on this and realising that that is serendipitous to practicing Qigong or some types of Qigong and not the main goal or the main experience. Often I think it's healthier to be aware of these sensations and then just gently let them go. And finally guys, people often ask me, how long did I used to practice and what is the longest meditation I've ever done? The longest meditation I ever done in one sitting is 10 hours, and I was often practicing 4 hours every day. Nowadays I practice about an hour, and the meditation can be half an hour to an hour. Thanks for listening guys and staying with the video. If there's any more questions, please type them below and I'll do my very best to answer them. Take care and stay healthy.